What if thought leaders from around the university came together to discuss state-of-the-art remedies to 21st century challenges? Florida Atlantic University's faculty are pioneering education through cutting-edge solutions such as artificial intelligence, authentic assessment, and active learning. Join us as our faculty forge new paths to the future of higher education. From the Center for Online and Continuing Education, this is Faculty Lounge Live.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Faculty Lounge Live, hosted by the Center for Online and Continuing Education. It is indeed my pleasure today to introduce you to Dr. John Critelli, who is in the College of Education with the Department of Educational Leadership and Research Methodology.
You got it. That's it. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So could you give us a little bit of your background, please?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is John Critelli. I am the Director of Grants Development and Administration in the Office of Educational and Leadership Learning. As you mentioned, in the Department of Educational Leadership and Research Methodology in the College of Education. Along with that, I'm also a program director. So I am a director of a master's degree program, a special master's degree program in Broward County Public Schools. That is a school leadership preparation program. So I've got 15 master's students and 11 doctoral students in that programming. And beyond that, I'm a jack of all trades, do research and all those other things. So it's really excited to be here.
Wear multiple hats, right?
Wear multiple hats, that's right.
In addition to which you also do some teaching.
I do, yes. So I'm the lead instructor for our STATS 6113 course for our school leadership preparation programming, as well as our educational research course. And they're bookend classes. So the students start with a STATS course in the beginning, and they end with the research course at the end.
So they get you at the beginning and also wrapping things up for them.
They sure do.
That's great.
Yes.
So I would like for us to have a little bit of a conversation about how you integrate artificial intelligence into your work, both personally or professionally and with your students.
Yeah, I've been using AI quite a bit lately in my both professional and personal work. And so I know we'll be talking a lot about some of the applications in greater detail as we go through today's presentation. But just on the brush, it really helps me with writing emails and sort of coming up with protocols for the students, like coming up with activities and such. You know, as instructors and so forth, we're really good about coming up with the activities, really good about coming up with the things that we want to share with our students, but maybe not so thinking through on the how. So we can I generate some really great ideas on how to apply some certain things that I'm trying to share with my students there. And so professionally, I use it for multiple things. And if you're familiar with ChatGPT, they have multiple GPTs that you can search. And so you don't have to just use the standard prompting with the output. And so they have multiple different types. And they have one for kayak, which is the, I don't know if you've ever used it for flights. You can put in your dates and so forth where you're going. But let's say you have to be somewhere at a certain time. You can put in, I got to be there at a certain time. It'll give you all these options. So both professionally and personally, I found great use of ChatGPT and artificial intelligence.
Excellent. And as we have talked, I've heard you make a reference to the fact that AI snuck up on the world.
It sure did.
Can you give us a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, I mean, we all came out of the pandemic and we were exposed to and we were hearing a lot about ChatGPT. What's this ChatGPT? What is artificial intelligence? What is it going to do? What does it mean? Is it going to replace us? And, we're sort of having all these sorts of conversations. And at one point I was really curious, when did we start really talking about artificial intelligence? And specifically for me, I was curious, when did we really start about talking it in education? And I come to find out, we've been talking about artificial intelligence for quite some time, especially in education space. So I was initially shocked by that, right? Here we are after the pandemic, this tool now has become available. And we're all just sort of like scratching our heads. Where did this come from? Did it just fall from a stork flying, above and so forth? And it just sort of fell into our laps. And so it really did sneak up on us. I mean, we were all distracted by the pandemic.
Right.
This was all, being engineered well before the pandemic pause took place. And it was continued to be in development and lots of beta testing and so forth while we were at home, kind of distracted by, the world and what was going on around us and when we were going to get, back into our social settings. And, we were thinking about the simple things like, just going shopping without, being concerned about needing to wash the vegetables when you came back. And so it really did sneak up on us. And, I think the other piece that really, caused some confusion is the way certain organizations handled the availability of this tool on the web. And so just around here in general, with some of the school districts we work with, many of the school districts just blocked its use. And so, what does that tell people, or what does that tell students about, this particular tool? It certainly says, oh, it's a no-no, we can't really access it on those networks. Whereas, FAU took a different approach. FAU really, had discussions about it, said, this is a tool that's not necessarily going away. How can we sort of bridge, what some organizations are doing, which is completely blocking it, where FAU did not do that. FAU was very much open to the idea and came out with the preamble. So yeah, I think it did sneak up on us, and it was this tool. And so now we've got people who are sort of not necessarily, they don't know much about the tool per se, or all they've heard about the tool is what people are worried about, what's going to happen in the tool, what's it going to replace me, and so forth. So I think that's really where we're at. So I think it did sneak up on us because of the global pandemic we're in, but it was always a part of the plan. It's always a part of the plan.
And you referenced using it as a tool to help support your communication.
Yes, yeah. So, in general, I mean, so the experiencing and using AI has, impacted my professional work. I think we're bleeding into the next question now, which is essentially, it has. And so, I've always been a person who is long-winded, and I know a lot of people who might be watching this and know me are probably laughing at that, because I always felt like I would need to explain certain things, or here's the why behind, because there's a lot of people that need to know the why, but I took needing to know the why in a whole new direction, to the point where let's say I facilitated a meeting, right, and I needed to follow up with everybody afterwards, kind of capturing what the essence of the meeting was and the next steps and so forth, and explaining and giving my gratitude for having the meeting and so forth. And how do you put that all into an email, back where it's not too long and people will take a look at. So for me personally, I believe in my professional setting that the use of this tool has really helped my communication, my personal communication. We've all been there where we have been sitting in front of the computer and we're waiting to press send on an email, and we're just not quite sure if it's good enough, if it's for the audience that we're sending it to, and so forth. And so running it through ChatGPT for me, like how does this read, or does this read well? And it will, tell me, yeah, it reads well, but maybe here's a revised version. At which point I'll take a look at the revised version and see, maybe that's more, clear, or it's a little bit better than what I had come up with. And so in that sense, it has really helped me in my personal communication, so much so that I would say that it even has an impact, a benefit on my own confidence as it's related to my work and to communicating and so forth. When we think about, sending a follow-up email, those things are so small on the priority list compared to all the things that we need to do. Yet it could take us an hour or so to do it just because of those things. And so now that we have this tool that I have access to, and I get to put it through, it really helps me in my confidence in being able to send things and knowing that I'm coming across clear, I'm not being over, too long-winded, and so forth. But there's been other benefits too, though. There's definitely been other benefits too as well. And another one of those is basically just communication as well with students, right? So not just in my work as an administrator, in the Office of Education Leadership Learning, but also when I'm kind of trying to communicate with students. So like, for instance, when you have your class, right? You're in your class and you're talking about certain topics, and obviously we have an interest in that, right? So we're getting emails from our professional organizations, and we're getting emails from, new research that's coming out in these particular spaces and so forth. And so, which maybe not necessarily a part of the curriculum per se, right? It's not necessarily a part of your course materials, but you want to share it because it's a new article or new research that came out.
Yeah.
So I've dabbled quite a bit with ChatGPT to the point where I've been able to develop my own GPTs.
Wow.
Which is really cool. Yeah. In fact, one of them is publicly, you can actually find it. If you're searching for GPTs on ChatGPT, you actually can find the one that I've created. And so what that GPT helps me with is to basically share information with students about new information I'm seeing. So I would put it into the GPT and I say, can you please draft me an email with the attached article that I want to share with my students? And it will go ahead and give me an output that I then can, move, copy, and paste onto an email and send. Would you like to see it?
Yes, I was just going to ask if you could please show us an example of that.
Yeah, I did. I came prepared today. So right now, like for instance, let's just say this article came across. So this article, The Barriers That Hinder Effective Implementation of Principles Instructional Leadership, as we can see, it's kind of new. And so it's an article that I thought was really interesting because the students in the leadership preparation, we focus on instructional leadership. And I was like, what can be learned, what can be shared, what could be new out of this that I'm not necessarily doing? So here's the article, right? So you have it saved. I have it saved as a PDF onto my desktop, so I have it, can access it easily. So then when I go to my ChatGPT here, it's called the Current Events Connector by John E. Critelli Jr. Here it is. And we just have a simple prompt here. So draft me an email to share the attached article with my students, and then I use this little paperclip here, and I find the article that I need and I attach it. And then I go ahead and I press enter and send. And then it should draft the structure that I had set the GPT up to do, which is, as you can see here, I hope this email finds you well. It cites the title of the article. It gives them 3 key takeaways, 3 major takeaways for them to think of. And of course, like anything else, we as educators want them to ponder. We don't want just to say, here's new knowledge, right? And so forth. But it ends the email draft with things for them to ponder. So some questions about what this means for their current work and so forth, to really give them some things to think about. So it's not just, here's an article per se, here's an article, here's some couple of things that were important, and here are some things to ponder.
And so how to reflect on it, and then how to apply it in their own work.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So this is this is accessible to everybody. I can share the link with everybody who's watching and anyone who would like to test this one particular out.
Great.
But I have trained this GPT specifically to take an article, read the article, pull out some 3 major concepts of it, and then pose 3 questions to the students for how they can, what are they going to do with this information thereafter and so forth. So it really works well. I mean, you don't have to use what the output is verbatim. I mean, you can just sort of borrow the things to ponder and put it in an even shorter email and so forth. So use as you please. But yeah, this is one tool that has helped me, kind of pass around information a little bit quicker. I mean, we can sit and read and then think about how we're going to share it, where this tool here is, I've read it, oh wow, this is a great article, I really would love for them to see it, and just put it in here and have it draft, and then I just kick it off with hopes that they
absolutely,
that they take it.
Absolutely. So you're quite a proponent of AI. I suspect you deal with some colleagues that may not be quite as enthusiastic. How do you approach your colleagues with it?
So just going back to, what I was saying earlier, it snuck up, and there's a lot of people that have different perceptions about what this tool is. And so, if they come to me and ask me, I sit down and I say, look, first is I frame it as the assistant you've always wanted. Look, really. Yes, I've heard it also be referred to as a member of your research team. In fact, a recent grant that we submitted to the Institute of Education Science is we took our tool, our conceptualized tool, which was AI, and we put it in open systems theory. It was actually a member of the system. And so I do see people referring to the tool in that sense. Yeah. And I think for the grant purposes, the tool and what we wanted it to be doing with the educators, it could be as well. But we don't have to dive in thinking that this is going to replace you or be that kind of a thing. And in fact, it's really just that assistant that you've always wanted, but you never could have because there's no funding for those assistants and so forth. And so it's really that assistant that you wanted to do some particular tasks for you that we might consider to be daunting. That might be something that's just sort of need to do. It's a formality, so to speak, and you can use this platform to help make those things a little bit easier. I compare it to years ago when I was in math class and we had the calculator, right? The calculator came out and the teacher would say you can use the calculator, but however, you need to always show your work. So you use your calculator, you still need to show your work and so forth. Before now, when you can just use the calculator, it's now an indispensable tool for us to be doing math. And I foresee this as becoming an indispensable tool for us to function and be efficient as professionals. I also think that vision building is important when it comes to this. Like, for instance, if we're sizing up this tool and we want to use it, we've never used it before, and you're feeling a certain kind of way, like, for instance, you're thinking that this might be that replacement tool or something of that nature. Sitting down and really defining what it is that you want to utilize it for. What are those things that and I tell them to think about what are the things that you do over and over again that you wish there was, some button you can press and it would just do it automatically. And so those are the sorts of things that I then would say, okay, let's try to shift now to do those tasks into ChatGPT. So I really feel like, the vision building process with them is important to really get an idea for, what are their perceptions of the tool to begin with in the past to try to break them free of that. And so forth. So don't be fearful using it, just do it. Diving in and doing it is really going to be critical for people. Instead of just fearing it and kind of walking around the bush, so to speak, open it up, start talking to it. And so then the other questions that come is like, how do we write the right prompts? Like, how do we make sure that it does it? It's trial and error. But I'll tell you what, treat it like an assistant, like the detail that you would explain to somebody how it is that you're trying to do, what you wanted to accomplish. That is the same detail I recommend you putting into the system. So my prompts sometimes are like, an essay in and of itself, because I'll dictate to it. And so it also has an app, which is really cool. So it's on your phone. And I'll often find myself just opening the app and using the voice to text and just talking to it. This is what I remember from the meeting, this is what I'm currently thinking and so forth, and then it will sort of organize my thoughts thereafter.
I love that approach.
Yeah, a lot of people just feel like, you really need to prompt it, but you don't. You just need to work with it. And then when you review the output it's giving you, and you say, oh boy, this is not anywhere close to what I was looking for, so to speak, right? Then you tell it what was wrong with it and what you need it to be doing, right? We can explain that, right, to some degree. And so really, that kind of a detail, but the detail as if you were trying to articulate that to somebody who's maybe a fifth grader, per se.
So does it ultimately adapt to your strategies and how you want it to respond?
Yeah, so I'm still like trying to figure that world out a little bit. I know that when I open up a chat and I start going through, it will sort of do this memory updated piece, right? Now, from what I understand though, it doesn't go across your different chats. Okay. And so I think it does pick up to some degree because, like, for instance, here's an example. I always sign my emails best and then my name, whereas the ChatGPT does best regards, always, right? And so every time I say, help me, help me draft this email, so to speak, it will do best regards. So in that sense, I'm telling you, probably not. Okay. But there are settings within the in your personal account that you could set some things, like right. For instance, certain outputs, like words that come out, like maybe it's using professional development. You want to use professional learning, and so you can just tell it to avoid those particular terms. Yeah.
Okay, so let's think about how you incorporate it into your teaching strategies. Maybe how you use it for student support or feedback. Yeah.
So I had mentioned in the beginning, course instructor, right? And so I had just finished a revision of the course, a brief update from when it was initially created. And I leveraged AI quite a bit in that process. There's a lot of redundant things that take place. So for instance, the course that I am the lead instructor for is taught by several adjuncts. And so we create these things called course planners that sort of break out, the timing of the course, which is, 2-hour course. What would you be doing, the first 30 minutes, the activity, this 45-minute activity, just give them an idea of, how to facilitate and implement the plans for the particular module. And so I got to a point where I developed, the PowerPoints, I developed the activities, and I would put it in and I'd say, can you draft me the course outline for the professor? And it would read everything that I was doing and it would put it into this template that I created about what I was going to do. It was quite helpful in doing that, right? So I didn't have to write out all 12 course planners, right? I just had to create the module content and the PowerPoint presentation. And a lot of times we develop our PowerPoints to be, to walk us through the whole class anyway, right? So it already had the detail from me. So now it's just reading my detail and putting it onto this thing so that there's a one-pager for the adjunct to read. And so, so for course design and so forth, it's been really well. Here's another place that I think most of us...
I'm going to let you come back to that in just a moment because I believe we have a question.
Oh, we do?
Okay. Yes.
All right.
Good afternoon, Dr. Judy and Dr. Critelli. Thank you for this conversation. So we have a question from Sierra Mincy. And he says, how do you think AI will continue to change higher education?
Well, it's a big one. It continues to change every day. I do think it's definitely changing higher education. Now, we didn't necessarily get to some of the thoughts that I have about its use in the research and so forth. So like moving away from that piece. I really do think it's going to become a major part of everyday life for us as functioning as individuals in our personal and professional life. It's going to be with us like it is me in my pocket 24/7 and so forth. I think in the immediate, what really we're faced with is kind of rethinking our evaluation process and how we assess students and student learning. And so these are discussions that we've been having already. And as I was just on the course design work, I think right now I've just lost my train of thought for a second.
Okay, the use in research.
Yeah, well, we don't want to necessarily use it, but our assessment, changing our assessment, right? And so we know that it's a language model,
Yeah.
and it can provide with written language. And so if your course was one where you focused on essays or creative writing and so forth, what are other ways that we can assess students or outside? So maybe moving towards more video presentations, in-person presentations, and so forth. Might be a little bit better, so we can make sure that that the learning that they're showing is authentic and true.
Yeah, absolutely. So, can it apply as far as classroom management or perhaps development of the materials for teaching?
So yeah, I think in terms of my course design that I was mentioning, I leveraged it for, like, for instance, we know the activity we want them to do. We know that we want them to do an article jigsaw with these 4 articles that we've selected, right? So I would put it in and I'd ask it to help me with student instructions, right? And so, so that it's clear, so that the students know. And then I even say, okay, no, I want an instruction sheet for them to give them as a handout, right? So they can have that. But I also want a shortened version of this to put on a PowerPoint slide. So when I get to the PowerPoint slide, I've got the activity instructions in a shortened version, and then I say refer to your worksheet there with the version. So it has helped me leaps and bounds when it comes to that kind of thing. So I would call that the bells and whistles work, right? So like we're really good at getting the content there and all that other stuff, but the bells and whistle things like that course planner, like those activity instructions, like the minor things that we might just gloss over because it's not really a thought, can be done very easily. With leveraging the ChatGPT.
So it seems to come up with some of the concepts that we might have gone through our head, but right out again.
Absolutely. I mean, here's another area is diversifying our discussion questions. We have this article. A lot of us have those 3 main discussion questions that we use over and over again, no matter the article, right? And so, here's where I said, please apply Bloom's taxonomy to really diversify and strengthen these questions, these discussion questions. And it can provide you a whole listing of things that you then can choose from. You don't take them all, you choose whichever ones sort of speak to you. But one more thing before we get too far, I want to get to that student feedback piece. I think a lot of people who might be watching are familiar with the Canvas speed grader. And so when we have a class of 20, I don't want to say that out loud because some people out there might have 75 students in a class. Once you do the speed grader and you're reading over the student work and you're trying to provide the feedback, by the time you get to the 3rd or the 4th one, you're starting to say the same things. Now, Judy, let me tell you, the students talk to each other. They know, they share notes, they know, oh God, you got the same feedback and so forth. And what does that tell the student in that moment? That maybe they didn't take the extra time to read through mine like they did somebody else's or so forth. We don't want our students to have that kind of thoughts, right? Or perception of what it is that we do when we're grading and so forth. So I've used it to help me to diversify my feedback because I'm repeating myself over and over and over again. It's the same assignment, let's face it. Right? So of course we're going to have some of the same feedback, but how can I say this differently so that if the students are sharing, the feedback that's provided, it doesn't read the same. And so it makes them feel like they're being seen and that you're actually reading their work and you're taking the time in there. So I think, that actually helps the way we're perceived by our students as well.
Absolutely. So before we go on, we have another question from our listeners.
Sure.
Thank you, Judy. So we have another question from the audience. This time is from Yolanda Crosby, and she asked, as an instructor using ChatGPT, in a positive light, how do you instruct your students the positive use of using the program versus negative use in their assignments?
Great question.
Yeah, that is a good question. And so, I don't have it all figured out, which is maybe, we were discussing earlier that we might have a midpoint and a later follow-up here. But with what I do with them is I sort of ignore it in the beginning, right now, right? And I sort of go through the motions and show them. So for instance, in my stats class, we use SPSS, which is the IBM software. And we go through the motions of, loading our data, analyzing our data, and so forth. But at the very last module, right, the very last module, module 12, once they're all done with all this, I go with and I speak to them about, okay, so this is what we've done, and then I show them how they could have leveraged ChatGPT. When it comes to numbers and it comes to research and all this other stuff, I tend not to encourage the use of ChatGPT in this case. There was a recent Apple study that just came out a few weeks ago that said it's not good in mathematicals and reasoning, and I agree. My experience and personal experience with using it is it cannot be trusted necessarily with numbers or doing numbers and so forth. However, in a research sense, like for instance, when we get our output on SPSS, which are tables and numbers, we need to create. APA requires us to create a table of our own in our manuscripts. So it could easily take the picture and then make the table for you, for your covariance and so forth. And then you paste that, as opposed to making your table and going to the picture and typing in the number. We all make mistakes and so forth, especially if you're doing a quantitative study. So it does help. As for the other things, even though I mentioned I ignore it, I do talk to them about the use of it and so forth, and the healthy use of it and how they use it, simply first by starting asking them how do they use it, or do they use it or not. What I'm finding is, because I think of the negative perception of it, a lot of people aren't necessarily open completely about their use of it. So they're sort of hiding the fact because they think the fact they use it, maybe some people will think that they're not capable of their jobs and so forth. So but I encourage people to share what it is and how you're using it so that other people can learn from you, and then also, reap the same benefits that you're reaping from your use.
So any other tips you would give to those who are hesitant about it?
Well, I think vision is the first thing, right? Like really just coming up, what do you use it for? What are your painstaking tasks that you do that you want to pull your hair out? Like for instance, for me was sitting there for an hour before I can press send on an email because I'm worried about how people will perceive it, right? So encouraging to start small is really where it's at. As I was mentioning earlier, you're not going to get that kind of user manual per se on this particular thing, because people, it's almost infinite the way you can utilize this tool. And so I encourage you to start out small, right? Like let's say you have a task, you need to do something, it's not your favorite task, and open up the ChatGPT, it's free to use, and just start typing to it. What is it that you need to do? What does the end thing look like? And press enter and see what happens. And then based on that output, review that output, and then say, it wasn't really where I needed to be, and go ahead and tell it, no, I needed this, or this was good, but change this part, or so forth. And just continue to work with it until you get to that point. It'll do things for you, and it's pretty quick, right? So you won't waste a lot of time sitting there trying to, trial and error with it. But I really believe that in order for us to get there, we really just have to open it up and start working with it. Something as easy as that current events connector that I shared earlier today. For that one particular thing, maybe that's where you want to start.
Yeah. And even though you are taking some time to continue with your questions, I think it's probably balanced out by the time you're saving when you're agonizing over each individual word in a response to someone.
Correct. That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
So we had a question earlier. I would like for you to perhaps expand on it a little bit. The future of AI in higher education, and where your students, my students, everyone else's students are going to be dealing with it.
So I've been to several conferences lately, and a common thing that I've been hearing is that those people who are not using AI are going to be replaced with those people who are. And that's a very common thing that I'm hearing, right? And so I can see that happening, right? Because from an organizational perspective, like for instance, if the benefits that I'm receiving are these benefits that many people are receiving, your workforce is going to be more confident, right? They're going to be more productive, they're going to be more efficient and so forth. And they're going to want to see that. They're going to want to encourage the particular use of that. And so it really becomes important. Now, I can't tell you what it's going to look like in 5 years because I'm amazed right now as to what it looks like now. I mean, even the current times, right? We're worried about disinformation and all this other stuff, right? But I really think that it's going to continue to evolve. I think it's going to evolve more so by the people who are using it and how it's using. I think organizations, we're probably going to learn more from them. I think, for instance, I'm in school leadership preparation. So my focus right now is wondering how they're utilizing it. How are the principals right now looking at it? How are the district leaders utilizing it and doing it? And so I think, doing some kind of exploratory work, if you're in the College of Business and, trying to understand how those CEOs, see the benefit in their workforce and so forth, and really bringing that back into your programming and saying, okay, this is what exists, this is there, so what am I going to change in my preparation of these candidates and so forth, in my programs to get them ready for this next level of success?
Absolutely. And so with that, we have a question, and I would like to open it up for any other questions that may be coming in.
Thank you, Judy. So Dr. Critelli, we have two questions. The first one comes from Julie Gray, and she's asking, I know that you mentioned that there's really not a manual for this, but she's asking about, are there tutorials for ChatGPT you might recommend?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Julie. I have not come across them. I am sure on YouTube there would be. But as I mentioned, I think everybody's going to use it differently. And so I think just opening up ChatGPT itself, looking at the prompt, having an idea of what it is that you need to do, right, in this particular time. And even if it's not work related, let's just say you want to, impress yourself, and you want to come up with an invitation for your holiday party, right? Put in the information for your holiday party you've got coming up, and say, can you draft me an invitation and let it come? So trial and error, and so forth. There is no user manual. As soon as you pop it open, it's just this thing where you type in, and as soon as you type and press enter, it starts to come alive, So there's really not, there's not a manual. It's just going to ChatGPT and just typing in what it is that you're looking to do. But figure a task before you go, and then just try it out and see what happens.
I liked your idea of using it to help you plan a trip. That's an amazing.
I tell you, that was really cool because sometimes when you need to be in two places, or you need to leave another place, or you need to be somewhere at a certain time, right? And we go to each of these airlines, it's so much, but this thing looks across all of them. And it really helps.
Incredible.
It is incredible.
And Moise, we had another question.
Yes, Judy. And we have the last question from our audience. And this one comes from Sabrina Sembiante. And she says, Dr. Critelli, in your experience, what is the value added of the paid version of AI tools such as ChatGPT versus the free version? Have you found that it offers more precise or accurate information on logic conceptualizing, or can we really get access to most of the benefits from the free version currently through experimenting with prompts?
Good question. So the free version will have a limit, right? It will have a limit on how many outputs you can do in a particular day. So there's that piece. The other piece is that you're not necessarily saving chats and so forth. So you wouldn't be able to refer back or continue to develop out thoughts that you had previously. The other piece, which I'm not 100% sure, but before I was doing my demonstration, I opened up an incognito window because I was like, oh, nobody needs to see the other chats that I have on my left window. And then when I put the link in there, it made me need to sign in, right? And so I don't know, I don't think the free version you have to sign in, but I think to access these particular GPTs, that's not necessarily just ChatGPT in general, you need to have an account to do that. So as soon as it kind of came out, I did get the subscription, so I didn't really spend too much time with it on its free version. So I couldn't really tell you, but I do know that there was a limitation, and that's what kind of jumped me into the subscription, because I was like, I don't want to be limited, because sometimes you're just trying to get it to do the right output, and then all of you've reached your quota for the particular day, because it was, and also I was new at the time.
Right,
so I was, expending those tokens left and right, trying to get it to do it. But over time, I've become more comfortable using it, confident using it. I turn to it just, pretty easily. Like, for instance, if I'm doing scheduling or so forth, and I just need to send out this information to my students for their programming, and it's a lot, and so helps you be concise, as I mentioned earlier, and so forth. So I really do see myself continuing to use it, maybe more. I'd say right now, because of the company we're in, for the research aspect of the things, I find it to be a little off. I'm not comfortable or confident with it at all, doing mathematical things. And then, as I was saying, the latest Apple study that came out really said, pause for the cause for now. I think at future iterations, it might become a little bit easier, but nothing beats you as the researcher, I think, particularly when we're doing qualitative studies and so forth. Yeah. You could do it. It could find patterns. But there's a feeling that comes into that kind of research, and we have to be connected to it. And I think the AI takes us away from it. And so I'm not there yet on that sense, but everything else under the sun, I definitely promote it.
And so it sounds like an awareness thing. The more you use it, the more you feel confident in trying to use it and see where it takes you. Yeah,
so I'll give you an example. I was writing something, and I'm like, gee, I need to find a citation for this. And you can spend quite a bit of time in the library trying to find this, a good citation that would work for what you're writing. And so I asked, can you pull out some articles where in the abstracts it has something that's related to it, and then from there I would then select, okay, this one is saying it, or this one's not saying it. One time I did it, and it came up with a reference, and I was the third author of an article I didn't even know I wrote. So I will say, in those senses, I had enough experiences that stopped me from saying that this is a good tool to use for your research, maybe to organize your research, for sure, to help you write an interview script for a focus group and so forth, come up with really good interview questions to diversify using Bloom's taxonomy. 100%. Helping you, communicate with your participants, the purpose of the research and so forth, 100%. Helping you come up with the invitation email to recruit your participants, 100%. But to review and analyze the data, I wouldn't do it.
Dr. Critelli, this has been such a wonderful experience for me, and I am going to suggest that we commit to doing a follow-up on
Absolutely.
it
I'd love
as we
to.
see where it has taken us as we go forward. I suspect we're probably getting pretty close to the end of our time slot here, so I'm going to thank you.
Thank you.
For taking your time and your willingness to share. We so appreciate that. And I'm going to thank all those who are joining us for also spending the time to be here with us. So thank you so much.